everybody! Happy Friday. I hope everything's working out well for you. Today we're going to continue on. Now, we've covered movement, we've even looked at logs, we've done all those kind of things. Now, we've kind of hit a wall in terms of your normal progression, right? No. So this is where things can stagnate. This is where you'll find a lot of people kind of hit a wall and they don't get much better. And in fact, you risk going backwards. You often find when people say they took a step back from hardcore raiding into something low behind, is that they physically feel like I got worse. So how do we counter that? So today we're going to talk about being the volunteer. Now, being the volunteer does mean that we're going to do extra stuff on top of what we ordinarily do, which is one, going to make us more invaluable to a guild or a group of friends, which is great. And it's going to make us a much better player by default. Even if you don't realize it does, it absolutely does. But we're not going to start with that. What we're going to start with is what you don't do. What being the volunteer is not about. All right, so let's jump into it. All right, we're going to start with the bad first because people get confused on this shit. When I say be the volunteer, doesn't mean be the bitch. There's a distinct difference. And if you end up being the bitch, that could be a bad scenario for all. Even if you mean well, actually. You might not even realize you're being the bitch. So what do I mean by being the bitch? It means basically that you're acquiescing to whatever request comes your way.
What does that mean?
It means you're just saying yes. Like anything anybody asks you, you're just saying yes. Yes, I'll do it. And that's because Preacher said be the volunteer, so I should say yes to this. No. You have to know what you're doing. This classically comes in the form of a guild being in this scenario. Our tank just left. Does anybody have a tank ult, mate? And then you click, because you go, oh, well, Preacher's saying be the volunteer, and, you know, that's going to help things out. I'll tank for a bit. And your guild promises you they'll find a new tank, like, really soon, and it's going to be temporary. And then they discover that probably you're a pretty good tank, right? Let's say you've been following the guides and stuff, and you follow, like, my tank series. So you know all this stuff already, even though you've not been doing it for your guild for a while. And suddenly, you're now the guild tank. But you don't want to be. That was never the intention. You were there to fill a gap that needed to happen, and now you're stuck in this scenario. Anytime it comes to rerolling, now, personal story, the best guild, I shouldn't say that because I really like my current guild, but one of the best guilds I was ever in asked me, we decided as a team, now I didn't realize I was being a bitch here, because it was my suggestion. Again, I was in this volunteer mode, but I hadn't really ironed out the kinks, which is what I'm doing for you now. Coming into Wrath of the Lich King, we had a problem. We had a Blood Death Knight called Ghost.
What up?
We had a warrior. We had another warrior, which was me, and we had a protection paladin. That's right. We had nearly every class of tank ready and raring to go, except for the problem that we had two warriors. And me being me at the time was like, well, I'll re-roll to Druid, because Druid had a lot of benefits, and that meant that we had one of every tank spec available, fully geared, ready to go, should any raid situation, because we were all about to kill. All about the kill, very raid focused, all about the kill. So I said I'll re-roll to Druid. Problem was, I don't like Druid. But it made sense because it made the guild stronger. It made the team stronger to have this option. So I said, okay, I'm going to be the Druid, and I re-rolled a hardcore, man. I capped that things in like 4 days from scratch during Wrath of the Lich King, which wasn't easy. Played non-stop for ludicrous hours over those 4 days to actually get that job done. And ultimately, very quickly, I would say even during the leveling process, I knew I wasn't going to enjoy this class. And I ended up sticking around with it for... I was still a Druid in Ulduar. Probably around trial of the... Yeah, it was Ulduar, I ended up leaving it behind. But my experience was miserable because I wanted to be a warrior. It's as simple as that. I wanted to be a warrior, but for the sake of the guild and trying to make the guild stronger, make the team stronger, I decided to re-roll, left my warrior behind. And when I did go back to my warrior, as is often the case in WoW, and we've seen recently in the TDPs, the game had progressed, which meant that that character was now way behind, despite the fact he was hugely ahead of the curve in early Wrath of the Lich King, and actually struggled to catch up again on my warrior, which I didn't enjoy at all. So when it comes to being the volunteer, know your limits and know what you want to do, what you're happy doing, and be extremely aware of fucking yourself and potentially trapping yourself in a scenario you don't want to be in, because you will find that certainly if you step into a healing role temporarily or a tanking role temporarily, or you re-roll to a class that maybe you think's gonna be better but you've not really had the experience and tried it out on a lot, so you're not 100% sure, because the grass is always greener. The grass is always greener. Like, once you play a spec for a certain amount of time, looking at another class and spec and what they're doing, Affliction Warlock's a big one right now, for example. People look at what Affliction Warlocks are doing. We're going to jump cut because of the dog, and I'm back. People look at what Affliction Warlocks are doing, and they kind of think to themselves, oh, they're doing like crazy damage and crazy survivability. That's really cool. But a lot of people don't like how, people who've tried it don't like how Affliction plays. And very quickly you can be in this scenario where you've requested rerolls from the guild. It'll help us out, right? This is a classic scenario. It'll help us out. They're doing mad damage. I'll be able to support us in better ways. It'll make the team stronger. And suddenly you're playing a class that I wouldn't recommend. As much as I love my Affliction Warlock bros in my guild, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I really wouldn't. It takes a certain mindset to enjoy that spec, in my opinion. So those are the bad things. Let's talk about the good things. This makes you such a better player. Now, I have been doing this for... ever, pretty much, since around AQ 40s when I started being the volunteer. So what do I actually mean by being the volunteer? In order to enhance your gameplay, you have to do things more difficult than the ordinary. That's what it comes down to. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. So this is why I recommend, like, if you want to learn how to tank effectively and better, throw yourself into horrible pugs, where the unprecedented and the the completely undesirable situations are going to happen, and try and cope with that, because it's not good enough. And certainly as a DPS, or a healer, it's not good enough to have everything predictable and then you deal with it appropriately. So on this point, I press my tranquility. At this point, I press my power barrier. And this point, I set up for this because I know the other healers are going to take care of it later. You have to be in more uncomfortable situations in order to improve yourself. You have to be that way. Otherwise, the mundane is actually the limit of your challenge. Does that make sense? The mundane is your limit of challenge. So if you're training for a run or something, just learning to run that exact distance isn't going to be very helpful. People train to run slightly further. That way, you make the other bit easier. That's the very simple premise, is you try and make the other bit easier. So there's a lot of footage in the background of me doing things like this. For years. I tried to find some stuff from TBC, but basically I was a druid and stuff then. That was my volunteering. But you can see on like Beth Tillack, I was the guy who volunteered to do the caves. And what you're looking for is opportunities in raids to, or in any group scenario, because you could do this in Mythic Plus as well, and you could do it in all kinds of situations, is look for the thing that relies on a player to do the extra bit. That's what you're looking for. And knowing that your spec and class is good at doing that, first of all, because obviously if it's like immuning something and you don't have an immune, that's not a really good place to be. But you're always looking for ways to take the ordinary mundane stuff of doing, say, your rotation or just trying to maximize your DPS and trying to do that little bit extra while still doing the same. And what that means is that the ability to play your class, which is where a lot of people fall down in WoW, is their limit of their gameplay is just trying to do DPS. That's it. That's the absolute limit of where they get themselves to, is I'm just trying to do DPS. Well, if that's all you're ever striving for, then that's where your limit is just being able to do damage. If you do that little bit extra, doing the damage part actually becomes significantly easier, because what you're doing is you're actually forcing yourself to focus on other things that are going on in the game, rather than just, am I pressing this at the right time? You're still going to have to do those things, but they become easier than what the other task is. Yeah, you're adding this extra layer of difficulty, which you'll soon get comfortable with as well, while simultaneously still just doing all the rest of it in the background. It's something I highly recommend you guys find opportunities to do. And the overall result of this, of course, is being able to play at the best you possibly can is way, way easier. It's way, way easier because you're used to doing that now while doing other stuff at the same time. Because you'll very quickly find that doing the best you can do ain't that hard, and you can actually afford a lot of looking around and doing other things, but you have to get comfortable with it. You have to be in a situation where you're allowing that process to take place, where you're training yourself to do this. So hopefully now, while you've got things like you should be doing good movement, you should be able to move around very effectively now while doing damage. We did that video a few weeks ago. I hope many of you have had practice with that. I know many of you have had practice with that. Also dealing with how to assess your own damage and your own tanking and your own healing and dealing with that in its own way. Now you're ready to add an extra layer. That's what you're looking to do. Add an extra layer of difficulty to your gameplay. And what that will do is just, you won't realize the benefits of doing this until you try it, is actually just playing will become so much easier. And you'll start noticing so much more going on in the raid. You'll start surviving more passively. This is all stuff that's going to occur if you find things to volunteer for that are a little bit out of the ordinary, is you'll be seeing different things happening in the raid that you never noticed before. You'll be noticing things affect other players. You'll be able to manage yourself, like keeping yourself alive, so much easier and simply. It'll just be a case of, oh, it's a key press, or I need to request something, because you've been used to doing that in a much more difficult situation. Then when it comes back to doing the normal stuff, you're going to have such an easier time that even these fights, like, I don't know, Mythic Coven or Kingaroth, Mythic version of Kingaroth, or Heroic, or wherever it's where there's all sorts of crazy nonsense going on. The last phase of Argus, where the world's falling from the sky. I know it's not a difficult fight, but you get the idea. Baiting flares on Agramar. All these kind of extra things are dog shit simple to you. And that's kind of where the mentality will come from. And I'll pre-warn you here, of where you look at people who can't do it and you're like, how can you not do this? And the likelihood is, this is the key point of this, the likelihood is they've never pushed themselves beyond being able to do this one thing. And therefore that's where they are. They're still doing that one thing, which will often be like looking at like their DPS spells, looking at their cooldowns and stuff, because that's where they are. Whereas you went that bit further, and coming back to here, it's like, it's dog shit easy. Like, it's totally easier because I did not only that, but I did this little bit extra on top. All right, so find ways to volunteer for things. Now, the big feedback we had when we talked about this in WOD is somebody has already volunteered for the stuff in my guild. My guild already has a guy who volunteers, right? My guild already has their guy, and this will make you very attractive to guilds. Just request, can I have a go at this? If your guild says no, your guild says no, and you'll have to wait till the next encounter, right? You might have to wait till next expansion at this point. That's entirely possible. But I would suggest just saying, hey, do you mind if I have a go? And if you're somebody who's traditionally been quiet and never been the guy people have asked to do this, people are going to take fucking notice, man. They will. If you've been the shy guy who was always like, I hope I don't get asked to do anything. I don't, because you know those guys. You might be that guy, right? And something comes up. We need somebody to do this. And you go, oh, God, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. Lose that. Drop that attitude. Be the guy who goes, hey, can I have a go at this? Or I know this guy always does it. Even if it's something simple like Portal Keeper and you're a fast class and they've got somebody else doing it. Like I was doing it on my mage. Going and collecting a green orb, bringing it back and then trashing it over. I'm not great at doing that, but it went there for safety while we had a mix of classes and some trials in, right? But if you know you could do it, but like, hey, why is this mage doing it? I could do it. I'll do it. I'm a rogue, I'm a demon hunter, I'm a fucking windwalker, whatever. It's like, hey, I could do that. Be the guy. Be the guy who steps in and people will notice. They will. And you'll be amazed at how much better your gaming life will be when people are like, okay, what about pods? How many people fear going in pods? So many people. And if I hear more heroic pugs who wipe on the Antoran High Command because people can't do pods, be the fucking guy. Do it. I do it. I'll do it. No worries. Yeah, and you'll get in there like, this is a really easy job. Yeah, it is. But people are terrified. Terrified of doing it. So be the guy. All right, guys. Thank you very much. See you again. Bye-bye. No smart-ass comment, no?